I stand in the shadows of the grand ballroom, my long-sleeved black dress concealing more than just my reluctance to be here. The hospital gala sparkles with crystal champagne flutes and polished smiles, but I remain anchored to the wall, watching my brother Mason bask in yet another spotlight. "And now," announces the hospital director, "I'd like to welcome Dr. Mason Calder, the pride of our surgical team and, I'm told, the pride of his family." My fingers unconsciously drift to my right wrist, tracing the ridged skin hidden beneath the fabric. The scars pull tight as I clench my fist, a physical reminder of what remains unsaid between us. "I wasn't even supposed to be here tonight, Doctor." Lena Roberts called at the last minute with a stomach virus, begging me to take her place. "They need someone from the community outreach programs represented," she'd insisted. "Just sit in the back and eat the free food." Mason's voice carries across the room as he accepts the award for innovative surgical techniques. "Medicine isn't just about healing bodies," he says. "It's about building legacies that stand the test of time." The crowd nods appreciatively, but across the room, something unusual happens. A man in a tailored suit stares in my direction, his champagne glass slipping from his fingers and shattering on the marble floor. The noise momentarily interrupts Mason's speech, but the man doesn't notice. He's looking directly at me, his face a mixture of shock and recognition. "Excuse me," he says, his voice cutting across the murmurs. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I recognize that woman." He points toward me, and suddenly every head turns. "She pulled me from a burning cabin when everyone else had given up. She's the reason I'm alive." The memory flashes through my mind, unbidden a family dinner 3 months ago at my parents' Victorian home in Carson Ridge. Dad carving the roast beef while Mom fussed over Mason's recent promotion. "And what about you, Alexis?" Mom had asked, almost as an afterthought. "Still doing those emergency drills with the rural kids?" "My program received additional funding," I'd said, hope rising that they might finally understand. "We're expanding training to 3 more counties this year." Dad had chuckled. "That summer camp stuff sounds fun, honey. Not quite brain surgery, but important in its own little way." Mason had raised his glass then, that familiar condescending smile playing on his lips. "To my sister, who's still playing with campfires while the rest of us build careers. They never knew about the cabin rescue, never asked about the 3 surgeries to restore mobility to my hand, never questioned why I declined the Medal of Honor or how I afforded my apartment on a trainer's salary. The $275,000 civil recovery grant remains untouched in my account, a secret cushion I've never mentioned." Now the man doctor, Nathaniel Cross, according to his name tag, approaches me with purpose, extending his hand. "You disappeared after saving us. Why didn't you accept the Medal of Honor? The whole county searched for you." Before I can answer, Mason materializes between us, his smile professionally fixed, but eyes sharp with confusion. "There must be some mistake. My sister teaches evacuation drills to kids." For the first time this evening, my voice comes out steady and clear. "Not a mistake, Mason. Just a part of my life I never shared." The words hang in the air between us, and I watch as understanding dawns on his face. This narrative doesn't fit the family script. My parents push through the crowd, gravitating immediately to Mason's side. Dad's hand clamps protectively on his shoulder while Mom clutches his arm, both of them demanding explanations without sparing me a glance. "What's this about a fire?" Mom asks Mason, as if he would know better than I would. Dr. Cross looks between us, his expression shifting from admiration to confusion. "Your daughter crawled through flames to reach me when I was trapped. She refused medical attention afterward and wouldn't tell anyone her name." "Alexis?" Dad finally acknowledges me, his tone more accusatory than proud. "Is this true?" I meet his gaze, and for the first time, I see my family's dismissal through an outsider's shocked eyes. "Doctor, Cross can't understand why they never knew, why they're questioning rather than celebrating. Neither can I, anymore." My carefully constructed privacy stretches thin between us, threatening to tear completely. But watching their reactions, the quick calculations in their eyes about how this revelation might affect them, I realize something important. Perhaps it's time to stop hiding in the shadows. The next day, after revealing the truth, my phone buzzes at 6:17 a.m. Mother never calls this early. A text message glows on the screen instead. "Family emergency dinner. Mason needs your help. 7 p.m. Don't be late." No please. No questions about my availability. Typical. 12 hours later, I stand frozen in my parents' doorway. A hand-painted banner stretches across the dining room entrance. Our hero. The smell of pot roast, my childhood favorite, wafts from the kitchen. Mom rushes forward, enveloping me in a hug that feels foreign after years of perfunctory greetings. There she is, Dad booms, clapping me on the shoulder. The woman of the hour. I search their faces for sarcasm but find only beaming smiles. Mason hovers near the kitchen doorway, eyes fixed on the hardwood floor. What's going on? I ask, unwrapping myself from Mom's embrace. Can't we celebrate our daughter? Dad guides me toward the table set with the good china. After what Dr. Cross told us about the cabin rescue, why keep something like that secret? Throughout dinner, the praise flows as steadily as the wine. Dad recounts stories of my childhood determination. Mom serves second helpings of garlic mashed potatoes. You always loved these, though I can't recall her ever noticing. Mason remains silent, pushing food around his plate. After Mom serves her apple cobbler, another childhood favorite I haven't tasted in years, Dad clears his throat. Alexis, we need to discuss something important. His tone shifts from celebratory to somber so quickly it gives me whiplash. Mason is in trouble. Mom reaches for Mason's hand. Tell her, honey. Mason finally looks up. I made some bad investments, and then tried to recover with other investments. Gambling, Dad clarifies, his voice flat. Mason owes $98,000 to some very serious people. The cobbler turns to cement in my stomach. And what does that have to do with me? We migrate to the living room, my parents flanking Mason on the leather sofa, while I sit alone in the armchair opposite them. Family photos line the mantel behind them. Mason's graduation, Mason's white coat ceremony, Mason receiving awards. My solo appearances are limited to childhood school portraits. Dad stands, pacing before the fireplace. We know about the grant money, Alexis. The floor seems to tilt beneath me. What? The Civil Recovery Grant, Mom says, squeezing Mason's hand. We always wondered how you afforded that apartment on what you make. You investigated my finances? The betrayal burns hotter than any fire I've crawled through. Family supports family. Mom continues. That's what the money was for, not sitting in some account while your brother struggles. Mason finally speaks. I made one mistake, Lexi. You've been hoarding resources while watching me struggle. Hoarding? The word slices through me. That money is for an emergency training center. I've been planning it for years. This is an emergency, Dad says. We've already told his creditors you would help. My hands go cold. You did what? They've given us 3 days, Mom says. It's all arranged. The implications crash over me in waves. My entire savings, my future evaporating to cover Mason's gambling debts. My independence stripped away by people who never bothered to ask what I wanted. If you can't do this small thing, Mom says, voice hardening, then this decision determines if you're really part of this family. Mason leans forward. Maybe your reluctance comes from trauma. The fire, the injuries you hid from us. Maybe you need professional help, Lexi. Dad casually mentions, I ran into your landlord at the hardware store last week. We could discuss your living situation with him. The threat hangs in the air, exposing my rescue story publicly, questioning my mental health, threatening my housing. All because I won't hand over money I earned through literal fire and blood. I stand, steadying myself against the armrest. I'll give you $20,000. Their faces brighten with victory until I continue. With 2 conditions. First, Mason attends gambling rehabilitation. Second, the remaining money is never mentioned again. Mason nods with apparent gratitude while my parents exchange glances. Mom's lips tighten into a thin line, but Dad eventually nods. We can work with that, he says, relief washing over his features. As I drove home that night, I wondered if setting boundaries meant losing my family forever, or if it was the only way to preserve what little relationship we had. When you've been invisible in your own family, is it better to finally be seen on false terms, or to hold your ground and risk being cast out completely? 2 days later, I stare at my phone, the glow of Mason's latest Instagram post burning into my retinas at 3 a.m. While I offered him $20,000 on the condition he attend gambling rehab, he's posting selfies from Atlantic City casinos, designer sunglasses perched on his perfect nose, surrounded by chips worth more than what most of my rural students' parents make in a month. My thumb scrolls down to check the timestamp. Posted 6 hours ago. The phone buzzes with a text from Lena. Check Reddit. Search, Firefighter sister hoards money. I'm so sorry, Alexis. The post has already gathered thousands of upvotes. My firefighter sister hoards $275 kelvins while our family struggles. Complete with a blurry photo of me taken from distance at the hospital gala and paragraphs of fabricated family hardship. The comments section fills with vitriol from strangers condemning my selfishness. Families stick together, writes one commenter. What kind of monster watches her brother drown in debt? That night, my phone rings. Mom's name flashes on the screen at 3:17 a.m. How could you? Her voice trembles with rehearsed disappointment. Mason told us everything, that you flat out refused to help, not even a penny. That's not what happened, I say, but she's already talking over me. The Carson Ridge Weekly already called your father for a statement. Do you have any idea what this is doing to our reputation in town? I hang up mid-sentence, something I've never dared do before. Later that morning, 3 parents of students enrolled in my emergency preparedness program email to withdraw their children. The world I've carefully built starts crumbling around me. The next morning, I wake to a threatening voicemail from a man with a gravel voice. Your brother owes me 40 grand. He says you're good for it. We know where you work. I save the message, hands shaking as I add it to the folder I've started on my phone. Evidence. When I arrive at the Rural Youth Center for my Thursday class, Principal Hargrove meets me at the entrance, her face a mask of professional regret. Alexis, we've received some concerned calls from parents. Perhaps it would be best if you took a short break from the program while this situation resolves itself. I've taught emergency preparedness to rural kids here every Thursday for 3 years. These classes save lives, and just like that, I'm disposable. Walking to my car, I notice a father I recognize. His daughter Emily learned the Heimlich maneuver in my class last spring and saved her grandfather from choking 2 weeks later. He looks away when our eyes meet, hurrying his son past me to the building. My landlord, Mr. Prentice, corners me that evening in the stairwell leading to my apartment. He shifts his weight from one foot to the other, not quite meeting my eyes. Had some concerned calls about your character, Alexis. Folks saying there might be trouble. Your lease is up for renewal next month, and well, he trails off, tugging at his collar. I nod once, understanding perfectly. I'll start looking for other options. Saturday morning brings fresh rain and worse news. The storage shed where I keep equipment for my emergency program has been vandalized. Spray painted across the double doors in jagged red letters, selfish. Inside, the CPR mannequins have been slashed, first aid kits emptied onto the muddy ground, emergency blankets shredded, $5,000 of equipment destroyed. I photograph everything methodically, the spray paint, the ruined supplies, the single boot print in mud by the doorframe. I record the time, date, and location, adding these images to my growing evidence file. This calculated dismantling of my life carries my brother's fingerprints, though he's never dirtied his surgeon's hands with spray paint. When my phone rings with an unknown number, I nearly ignore it, but something makes me answer. Alexis? It's Nathaniel Cross. I remain silent, not trusting my voice. I've seen the posts online, he continues. I wanted you to know heroes don't advertise their scars, but they shouldn't have to hide them either. I've seen both sides of you, Alexis. I believe the real story. The knot in my chest loosens slightly. One person who sees through the smoke. That evening, the persistent knocking at my door doesn't surprise me. What does surprise me is seeing both my parents flanking Mason in the hallway. Dad's face is flushed with anger. Mom's pinched with determination. I let them in without a word, watching as they position themselves around my living room like they're staking territory. Mason stalks straight to my kitchen table, examining my belongings as if cataloging their value. Just give us the account information, Mason says, turning to face me. His voice cuts through the apartment, sharp and entitled. We're done asking nicely. Mom steps forward, reaching for my arm. I step back. Why do you insist on tearing this family apart over money? Her voice wavers with practiced emotion. We raised you better than this. I look at the 3 of them, these people who share my blood but who have never seen me. The burn on my wrist throbs beneath my watch as if responding to their presence. Slowly, deliberately, I remove my watch. This is what tore me apart, I say, extending my arm to show the twisted, ridged skin spanning from wrist to forearm. And none of you noticed. Not the surgeries, not the physical therapy, not the nightmares. My mother's eyes widen, her hand rising to cover her mouth. My father stares at the scar tissue as if it's appeared by magic. I stopped sharing my life because you stopped seeing me. I continue, my voice growing stronger. The money wasn't your concern before, and it isn't now. They stand frozen, confronted with physical evidence of what they've spent years ignoring. The next morning, my phone pings with a text from Dr. Cross. My college roommate specializes in financial cases. He'd like to help, no charge. Former rescue teammates begin contacting me throughout the day. They've seen Mason's post, recognized me in the blurry photo. We were there, they write. We'll stand as witnesses to what really happened. By afternoon, Ellen Richards, whose son participates in my rural emergency program, has organized a community support meeting. Those who actually know your work want to help, her message reads. The contrast strikes me hard. My family made demands without listening, while these relative strangers ask questions and wait for answers. That night, I come home to find my apartment door slightly ajar. Heart pounding, I push it open to discover my bedroom ransacked, the small safe in my closet emptied of the emergency cash and documents I kept there. At the police station, Officer Rodriguez reviews the security footage from my building's entrance. The timestamp shows 2:17 p.m. Mason's familiar figure appears, letting in a stocky man I don't recognize. The stranger wears a baseball cap pulled low, but the way Mason claps him on the shoulder suggests familiarity. As I drive home, my phone chimes with a text from an unknown number. Check your email. Your brother has done this before. 2 days later, I arrange the evidence in neat rows across Detective Warren's desk, each item labeled and dated with meticulous precision. The detective's weathered face remains professionally neutral as I present my case, but his eyes narrow when I show him the security footage. This is from Tuesday night at 9:17 p.m., I explain, tapping the screen where Mason's familiar silhouette enters my building's lobby. And here he is 20 minutes later, leaving with someone else. Detective Warren leans forward. And you're certain about the contents of your safe before this occurred? I slide a time-stamped photo across his desk. I document everything. This was taken that morning before I left for work. Dr. Cross places a thick manila folder beside my evidence. I've brought Alexis's medical records from the cabin fire rescue. 3 surgeries to restore mobility to her right hand. 2nd and 3rd degree burns to 20% of her body. She refused the Medal of Honor and media attention. The detective's eyebrows rise slightly. Why keep all this quiet, Miss Calder? Privacy was easier than explaining why my family never noticed. The words come out steadier than I expected. A slim woman in a tailored suit enters, nodding to Dr. Cross before addressing me. Miss Calder, I'm Vanessa Reed. Dr. Cross hired me to investigate the Reddit post. She opens her laptop. The metadata traces back to a computer at Carson Ridge Memorial Hospital, specifically Terminal MR7, located in the surgical wing where your brother works. Detective Warren's pen pauses over his notepad. I should mention, Miss Calder, that family relationships don't factor into criminal investigations. Evidence is evidence. Evidence. For the first time in weeks, something inside me unclenches. Mason attempted to wipe his hospital computer yesterday. Vanessa continues scrolling through her report. The IT department flagged it and discovered multiple unauthorized financial transactions on his workstation. He'd been using the hospital network to access offshore gambling sites. Detective Warren nods. The hospital contacted us separately yesterday. They're concerned about a research fund Dr. Calder created 6 months ago. Apparently, he solicited donations from other doctors, but the foundation doesn't exist. My phone chimes with a news alert. The screen shows my parents standing at a hastily arranged podium outside their Victorian home. Our daughter has suffered tremendous psychological trauma from her heroic actions, my mother says, her voice breaking at precisely the right moment. The fire left invisible scars that have affected her judgment. We only want to help her heal. I set the phone down, unsurprised. Turn it up, Detective Warren says. This might be relevant. As my mother continues her performance, 3 text messages arrive in quick succession, each from different doctors at Carson Ridge Memorial. Your brother defrauded me of $15,000 for a research study that doesn't exist. Mason borrowed $7,500 for emergency family medical expenses last year, never repaid. I have records of forged signatures on pharmaceutical orders. Will testify if needed. I slide the phone toward Detective Warren, who reads the messages with a slight nod. Their public statement just prompted 3 of your brother's colleagues to come forward, he observes. Sometimes the best evidence collection happens when we do nothing at all. With the evidence mounting against Mason, I find myself hesitating. Should I press for full criminal charges, potentially destroying his medical career forever, or seek restitution while offering him one final chance at rehabilitation? The detective seems to read my thoughts. You don't have to decide everything today. The law provides options. That afternoon, Dr. Cross leads me into a conference room where the hospital board has convened an emergency session. Their faces, previously known to me only from annual reports and charity galas, now regard me with careful attention. Before we address the allegations against Dr. Mason Calder, the board chair begins. We wish to correct a significant oversight. The door opens, and a man in a fire chief's uniform enters, carrying a wooden case. Chief Blackwell, older now than when I last saw him, but with the same steady gaze. Alexis Calder declined this 3 years ago, he says, opening the case to reveal the Medal of Honor. I'd refused. She pulled Dr. Nathaniel Cross and his family from a cabin fire after structural collapse made rescue impossible. She suffered severe burns requiring multiple surgeries. When I arrived on scene, she was administering emergency care to the victims despite her injuries. The board members exchange glances. The medal isn't why I'm here, I say quietly. No, Dr. Cross agrees, but the truth is. My phone buzzes with a text from Detective Warren. Local news running feature story tonight. The true hero of Carson Ridge. Thought you should know. As the meeting continues, another message arrives. From my father this time. His first direct communication in weeks. The text is brief, his customary authority notably absent. Is it true? All of it? Before I can respond, a notification for a handwritten letter delivery appears in my email. My mother's elegant script fills the preview image. I never asked about your scars. I never asked about so many things. The final message comes from the hospital's HR department. Staff physicians have submitted formal requests to distance themselves from Dr. Mason Calder. Board reviewing emergency privileges suspension. Detective Warren calls as I leave the hospital. Court date set for next month. Both criminal charges and civil restitution hearings scheduled for the same day. He pauses. Your brother will be served papers tomorrow morning. I thank him and end the call, standing in the hospital parking lot as the sun slants toward the horizon. For the first time since this began, I roll up my sleeve, exposing the ridged skin on my wrist to the fading light. Some fires leave visible marks, others burn beneath the surface. But all fires eventually run out of things to consume. A week later, I hear my parents before I see them, their hushed voices carrying through the thin door of my apartment. 3 sharp knocks follow. When I open the door, Mom's eyes are rimmed red, Dad's shoulders slumped beneath his worn flannel shirt. Alexis, please, Mom says, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. We need to talk. Dad follows, clutching a manila folder that trembles slightly in his grip. The apartment suddenly feels smaller, their presence filling spaces I've carefully kept empty. Mason made terrible mistakes. Dad begins, his voice gravelly with emotion. But prison would kill him, Lexi. You know that. Prison? I echo, crossing my arms. Is that what he told you this is about? Mom perches on the edge of my sofa, her fingers twisting her wedding band. We're here to make things right. Dad opens the folder, spreading documents across my coffee table. We're mortgaging the house. Everything we have. He taps a bank statement with his index finger. To repay what he took. We were wrong, Mom whispers, reaching for my hand. I step back. But destroying your brother won't heal you, sweetheart. Dad slides a notarized document toward me. We'll assume all of Mason's debt if you drop the charges. We've already signed it. I stare at their signatures, side by side as they've always been, united in everything except supporting me. You still don't understand, I say, walking to my desk. I withdraw my own folder, thicker than theirs. I met with the prosecutor yesterday. Their faces fall in perfect unison. But instead of the vengeful daughter they expect, I spread out my own papers, bound proposal, budget sheets, architectural renderings. This is the Cindercore initiative. I explain, voice steady. An emergency preparedness program for underserved youth. What that grant money was always meant for. I flip to the final page where a signature that isn't mine appears beside the prosecutor's. Mason's. Community service instead of jail time. Full restitution to all victims. And 3 years helping build something that matters. Dad's mouth opens, closes, opens again. You forgave him? No. I correct him. I held him accountable. I show them the facility designs, training rooms with simulated fire scenarios, classrooms for emergency medicine, outdoor spaces for practical drills. This center will prevent tragedies like the cabin fire, I explain. Kids will learn to save lives instead of fearing they can't. Mom reaches for the papers, her hands shaking, but everything online, the charges. This was never about revenge, I tell them. It was about stopping the damage. All of it. I look directly at them both, finally saying what needed to be said years ago. Mason needs consequences, not protection. I needed parents, not promoters. We all failed each other. On the confrontation day, a month later, the courtroom feels cavernous around me. Mason sits at the defendant's table, shoulders hunched in a suit that suddenly seems too large. My parents occupy the first row of public seating, a careful distance between them that wasn't there before. I take the stand, placing my journal and medical records before me. The witness box feels strangely like home, a place where truth matters more than comfort. Miss Calder, Judge Harmon says, you may begin your victim impact statement. I open my journal to the first flagged page. The 12th of October 2021. Mom called today to ask about Mason's award ceremony. When I mentioned my program received state recognition, she changed the subject. I turn pages methodically. The 3rd of February 2022. Dad helped Mason with the down payment on his condo. When I showed him my burn scars during dinner, he asked if I'd tried vitamin E. With each entry, I pair a medical record. 3 surgeries to restore mobility. Physical therapy twice weekly for 14 months. Skin grafts that never fully took. Mason stares at his hands throughout my testimony, refusing to meet my eyes. These journals span 7 years. I continue. Not to document pain, but to remind myself that silence doesn't heal. It only teaches you to accept invisibility. Judge Harmon leans forward. Miss Calder, would you like to suggest sentencing considerations for the court? The question hangs between us. I close my journal. I don't want my brother in prison, I say finally. I want him to face the people he hurt and help them heal, including himself. I look at my family, really look at them, perhaps for the first time. Silence doesn't bring peace. It just teaches others to ignore your pain. I'm done being quiet. Judge Harmon's gavel echoes through the courtroom 30 minutes later. The terms match what I'd negotiated. Full restitution, Mason's medical license suspended for 3 years, mandatory psychological rehabilitation, and community service at the Cinder Core facility. My parents sit stunned, halfway between their seats and the aisle. Their bodies lean toward Mason, but their eyes follow me, torn between their golden child and the daughter they never truly saw. I walk past them without stopping. Outside the courtroom, Dr. Cross waits, a folder tucked under his arm labeled Cinder Core Facility Proposal. Ready? He asks, offering his hand. For the first time in years, I don't hesitate to take it. 6 months later, I stood before 20 teenagers at the Cinder Core facility, my sleeves rolled to the elbows. The morning sun catches my scars, ridged skin, mapping the path of flames I once walked through. Remember, I tell them, my voice carrying across the training yard, fire doesn't just consume, it transforms. The teens watch with undivided attention as I demonstrate proper evacuation technique. Not one whisper, not one wandering gaze. Such a contrast to family dinners where my parents' eyes would slide past me to find Mason. Behind us, the east wall displays framed letters, testimonials from families whose children applied our training during real emergencies. Your daughter remembered to check the door for heat before opening it. One reads, my son knew to stay low and crawl to safety, says another. Your program saved our entire family. Later that afternoon, I adjust my collar before stepping onto the stage at the regional medical conference. Same type of ballroom as that hospital gala a year ago, but everything else has changed. Instead of hugging the shadows, I stand at the podium, facing hundreds of medical professionals. My name is Alexis Calder, I begin, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. I was a firefighter. Now I build fire breaks. The audience leans forward as I share both my journey and the practical applications of trauma-informed emergency response. No hiding, no minimizing, just truth, offered without apology. After the presentation, a small group gathers in the hotel bar: Dr. Cross, Detective Warren, and 3 members of my old rescue team. The low lighting reflects off our glasses as Dr. Cross raises a toast. "To the fires that forged us," he says, "and the truth that freed us." His hand rests comfortably on my scarred wrist. Neither of us flinches at the contact. I've stopped hiding these marks, and he's never treated them as anything but evidence of courage. The next morning, I walk through CinderCore's main training hall. Architectural plans for our expansion lie open on my desk, detailed renderings of 3 new facilities in neighboring counties. Beside them sits an official letter from the medical board, requesting my input on trauma protocols for first responders. A small voice interrupts my thoughts. "Miss Alexis?" 7-year-old Emma tugs at my sleeve. Her brother attends our teen program, but she often comes along, fascinated by our demonstrations. "Are you still scared of fire?" I kneel to her level, holding out my scarred wrist where she can see it clearly. "Everyone is," I tell her, watching understanding bloom in her eyes. "But if you understand what it burns, you'll know what to protect." As I looked at these young faces, learning to respect both fire's danger and their own courage, I wondered, would I ever be ready to rebuild bridges with my family? Or was it healthier to focus on these new connections forged in honesty? When does forgiveness become possible? And when is distance the truest form of peace?